of the exile, the Egyptian exile now starts, right? What does that mean? That the episode between Yehuda and Yosef is over pretty much, more or less. The big fight, the big feud, everything, this whole thing took effect. It ended, and Yosef reveals himself to the brothers and says, I'm Yosef. So now, at this point, Yosef is now trying to tell them in a very nice way what to do, to advise them, to help them. He's not being any more nasty to them, and this nastiness that we had before. This whole, this issue with the nasty words and nasty attitude and all this. It's over now, right? He revealed himself, that's it, right? Once he revealed himself, everything was clean, everything was nice, family, family-oriented stuff. No more feuds, no more anything like that. So Yosef Tzaddik now is trying to help them out. Why? Because they need help. What does that mean they need help? He knows that the famine is supposed to go 7 years. And at this point, the famine is very, very strong, so they still have a long, long way to go. So therefore he tells the brothers this, look, he says, you're not going to survive over there. In Israel, like this, in Eretz Canaan. So the only solution is you have to come here to Egypt and live over here by us. That's the only way that you can survive this terrible famine. Why? Because the food is over here. I have over here the wherewithal to help you out, to get you set up the way you need to get set up in order to survive. Otherwise, over there, God knows what's going to happen. Sometimes you have, sometimes you don't have, sometimes you got to travel, sometimes you can't travel. This, that, everything. It's hard to live like that. So he tells them, just come over here, bring the whole family. And bring also my father, right? Bring also Yaakov Avinu, and we're all going to live over here. That's what he tells them. That's the whole idea, right? So, what happens is now that Yosef HaTzadik is going to send them off. He sends them off to go back to Israel, to go back to the land of Canaan, and bring the father as well, bring the whole family. That's what he does, right? But when he sends them off, he tells them a few pieces of advice. Right? So they shouldn't get into trouble. Number one is he tells them like this, right? Don't now start feuding with each other on the way, right? When you go back. What does that mean? Don't feud about what happened between us. Don't feud about, what you did to me and how bad it was and all these things. Now try to do like some kind of a reckoning, to make a reckoning of what happened and why it happened and this and the analysis. To analyze, this and that. This is not the time now for analysis. You have to go back there. You have a job to do. You have to go back. Bring back your family, right? And don't get down into all these petty fights and these issues. That's what that's one of the things he tells them, right? Number two, he tells them also, what? I recommend to you, if you want to go back there and be safe and come back safely over here, also don't get involved too much in Torah, right? What does that mean? Tamid Chacham, right? They say, Tamid Chacham, one of the commandments that were commanded in the Torah is that when you're going on the way also, when you're going on derech, when you're going on the road, even if you're driving a Mercedes. So still, right, the thing is that the person should be studying on the road. You shouldn't be just sitting there, talking, dreaming out, counting sheep when he's on the road. You should be studying Torah. Where do we see that, by the way? That the Torah commands us that even when you're going on the road, you should be learning Torah. It says in the Torah itself, right? Where does it say over there? We say this every day in Shema Yisrael, right? You should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, everything. These words should be so he says right? You should speak about them when you're sitting in your house. What does that mean? When you're going on the road also. So we are commanded by the Torah that we should be studying Torah also when we're going on the road. So now, you know how it is, right? These brothers, they're all Talmidei Chachamim. So Yosef HaTzadik knows, what are they going to be doing when they go? They're going to be studying Torah on the way. They're not going to be looking at the tourist attractions, the Eiffel Tower, the Twin Towers, Who cares about these things? They don't care about these things. Talmidei Chachamim, right? They're looking in the Torah. They're talking about Torah when they're going on the road. So that's what it is, right? So, by the way, the Zohar Kadosh also says something very profound about this. That what? That we all travel, We all have to travel. Sometimes we fly on the plane. Sometimes we fly on the AMG, right? Whatever it is. We're flying somehow, whichever way that you fly, right? So, always a person has to remember one thing. That especially when you go on a long trip, we're talking about inner city, from one city to another, international, or all this kind of stuff. A person needs protection when he goes on the road. What protection does he need? Because they say, right, that the roads are assumed to be dangerous. What does that mean? A lot of accidents occur. A lot of people die on the road. You know how it is, right? Statistics are very bad.
Yeah, look what happened the other day.
Okay. So I don't know exactly what happened, but 20 people.
In a limousine.
Right. Yes, I heard about that. Yes.
New York?
Yes.
It's horrible.
So the point is, Rabbi, that the Torah is telling you that the road is a place of danger. Why is that, by the way? What's the reason why? Why is the road so dangerous? Because you're going so fast? The truth is that in those days they weren't going so fast. So, not only because of the speed. That's not the only reason. The reason is because when you go on the road, it's usually somewhat deserted there. Not a lot of people around. Nowadays in the highways we have a lot of people. But sometimes even on the highway it can be deserted. There's at night, there's nobody there at that time, whatever. You're pretty much by yourself. So the point is, right, that when you go in these places, there's a lot of over there, a lot of mazikim. You know what's mazikim? Harmful angels, demons, all kinds of things like this, right? So these demons hang around over there in these places. Why? Because they like to to go in places where there's no habitation, uninhabited areas. That's where they hang out. That's their Dunkin' Donuts. You know what I mean? So because of that, what happens is that you find them over there, and they are able to do damage. They have the power to do damage to you. What does that mean? They can take your car like this and flip it over like this.
They can do that?
They can do that. Yeah, these demons, they can flip over your car. They can flip the plane. Turbulence, man, goes down.
I was very, very worried when I drove back from Chicago. When I drove and back from
Can I open the door to remove the smoke?
Hmm?
Can I open it?
You understand what I'm saying? So, by the way, you shouldn't think that they have the power to do that for no reason. They usually do it because the person has some kind of a sin, he has some sins, and now they find a time to get him, They say, oh, now he's on the road, so that's the opportune time now to pay him back.
Me, God forbid, when a plane falls,
yeah,
and 250 people get wiped
right.
out, that there was a reason for it?
Yeah, there's always a reason for everything. I mean, nothing happens, there's no chance in this world, you know what I mean? Nothing happens by chance.
But there's some innocent people out there too.
So the thing is, right, that we think that they're innocent, but God knows everything what they did. You understand? He has the whole record over there. He's got all the records are there.
Doesn't God take innocent people also sometimes?
This is a very strong question, by the way. And the Kabbalah is full of these issues, the Zohar Kadosh and the Mekubalim talking about this issue. This is a very deep issue, by the way. If God takes innocent people or not. So the truth is, right, that sometimes innocent people are taken, by the way. And there's all kinds of issues there why this happens. And if you hear what I tell you, you're going to be shocked because...
Does that rarely happen, or it's something that happens?
It's not that rare, but it's not that common either, right? It's somewhat rare. But what happens is like this, right? Sometimes there are people who are basically innocent, as you said. But what happens is, right, that the Satan gets a call, He's the one who has the job to kill somebody. Angel of death, right? Angel of death is Satan. Right? So what that means is like this, right? They call up Satan, they tell him, listen, okay, we have over here, right, Mr. XYZ, he has to be gone now from the world, right? So can you go and take him, Take your sword with you, give it to him, and take him out. Finish him off. So they say, right, that sometimes what happens is that the Satan gets the wrong guy. Can you imagine? He makes a mistake. He takes the wrong guy, because this guy looks like him or he has the same name or whatever, all kinds of issues like this, and that the wrong guy dies. There are things like this that happen. Can you imagine such a thing? This is unbelievable. It's unfair, right? But says the Gaon of Vilna,
and Nazis live until 90-something.
Says the Gaon of Vilna, by the way. That's also a reason for that. But the Gaon of Vilna says, right, that everything is justice. Even when the mistake happens, it's also justice. What does that mean? Can you imagine something like this? So what does that mean? That means that person in his other lifetimes had sins that he had. So they're killing him for that. In this lifetime, he could be they had no sins. But because he had some kind of cheshbon, some kind of account from the other lifetime, they're going to get him now over here, right?
But I don't even know that I'm from the other lifetime.
You can pretty much assume that you are, because we all are pretty much, more or less.
We don't remember that.
We don't remember. But they do remember, and they know what we have to do in this world now to atone for that, all the things that we did. Mm-hmm. So therefore they now do all kinds of things. So these things do happen, by the way, sometimes. Somebody who's innocent can be taken, whatever. But even that is justice. What does that mean? That there's some kind of a deep justice there. that we
What about
don't.
the rumor
Yeah.
that God takes good people because He wants them with Him, close to Him?
That's another story. You're talking about there was one guy right in the time of creation.
Yes.
There was one guy who was taken, Hanoch, right? Was his name, right? Hanoch was taken. So they say, right, that why did Hashem take him? It says in the Chazal, not because he had sins. He had no sins. He was a tzaddik. But there was two things over there, right? That one was that Kadosh Baruch Hu saw that he was getting a little bit weary, right? What does that mean? Getting a little bit tired. And if you would have left him there for a little while, he probably would have sinned already, you know? So therefore he took him out to prevent him from sitting, you know? But the truth is, right, that this guy was not just a regular person. He was a very, very big man. He was something unbelievably big. So what happened was that when Kadosh Baruch Hu took him, he didn't just take him, you know, to play around. He made him into like a big angel. By the way, this happens also sometimes. There are people who are taken from this world and they become angels.
Literal angels?
Yeah, like Eliyahu Navi, he's an angel, right? Same thing, you know.
So accounts for this.
So we have actually the truth is it happens very, very often. This kind of thing.
Really?
Yes, they become angels.
If someone happens is they can become an angel.
Yeah, it becomes an angel. Yes, in the next lifetime becomes an angel. So what happens is, right, that and by the way, the Rashaim sometimes can become demons also, harmful angels. They go through the other side. That's what happens, right? They continue their ways in a different format.
Yes, I was just going to say.
Just changing the format, you understand?
But angels are created new.
Huh? But there's also people who are become angels. There's such a thing.
But the angels already existing, right? That's it. They're not born.
And there's always new ones being created all the time.
From what?
Rotation.
Wait.
Let's not get into this now. Yeah, listen. This is
It's a life. They have a lifespan, no?
We're not now discussing these technical issues, right? So anyway, so what we're saying is that I'm just telling you what it says in the books. Don't take it the wrong way. There's a lot of things it says in the books that people don't know, and they say they get surprised. What was that? You know, I'm just telling you what it says. What can I tell you? Right. I'm not responsible for the content. He's responsible.
Right.
You know. So anyway, getting back to what we said. Kadosh Baruch Hu does sometimes take people like that. So the thing is like this, right? Since we said that the roads are harmful, so when a person goes on the road, he needs to protect himself. He needs to have protection. What protection do we have from the Torah when a person goes on the road? Basically, we have two things. One is prayer, and one is Torah study. Two things, right? How do we do that? We have something called Tfilat HaDerech. What does that mean? That when you go on the road, there's a special prayer that we say. It takes about 20 seconds, 30 seconds to say this prayer. Very short. Yeah. When does this apply, by the way, this tefillah? It applies only when you're going inner city, right? When you're going in the city itself, you don't need to do anything. When you're going from one city to another, that's when it applies. Or you're taking a plane, right? Going on a plane, or you're taking a ship, right? Whatever, these kinds of things. So, Rabbi, what happens is like this, right? That Tfilat HaDerech is a special prayer. It's supposed to protect you from the harm. But that in itself is only one leg of this protection system, right? There's also another leg, right? Which is the more important leg, actually. It says in Zohar Kadosh, if you really want to protect yourself when you're going on the road, study Torah. That's the most powerful way to protect yourself. What does that mean? Instead of looking at the scenery, look at that tree, look at that lake over there, lake success, like this, like that. What is this? Yeah. Look inside over here, right? Look over here and see what's going on over there. Forget about that stuff. So a person, and by the way, this is exactly what it says in Pirkei Avot. They say, right, something very strange in Pirkei Avot. What does it say? That if a person is going on the road, they study Torah, right, and all of a sudden he starts to look at the nature, the trees, the grass, So he starts a comment. He says, look at that. Oh, there's such a beautiful tree, such a beautiful hill, such a beautiful mountain. So you know what it says in Pirkei Avot, right? A person like that is liable to death. What does that mean? Like, in other words, he could actually die from that. That he's going from the Torah and going into nature. It's unbelievable, this whole thing, right? How can a person be liable to death for such a thing like that? You think this is crazy? What? Come on, he's liable to death. All he did was just look at the nature. He's liable to what? That's like a capital punishment for that. That's it says in Pirkei Avot. That's what it says. So what does that mean? What's the meaning? So now we understand, right? Going to Zohar Kadosh, we understand very well. Why? Because Zohar Kadosh is telling you that what it means is like this, right? That when you stop learning when you're on the way. Since the way is a dangerous place, you're liable to death. What does that mean? You could die from that. Why? Because you're losing your protection. You understand? So therefore, this is the reason why it's very, very important to do two things, right? One is to say the prayer, Tfilat HaDerech, and one is to learn Torah. If you're doing those two things, you got maximum protection on the road. That's what it says. So now, right, knowing Yosef HaTzadik, knowing well that his brothers are like that, they're rabbis, Chachamim, that they learn Torah on the road. They don't look around, check out the fields and this and the farms and the cows. What is this? Right? Nature, look at nature. So they were not like that. So Yosef HaTzadik warned them. He said, don't get too much involved in Torah. Why is that? He told them, don't go too deep, Don't go too deep. Why not?
Because they're about to enter back into Egypt, which is a place of danger.
No, actually, just the opposite. They were going back to Israel, right?
Right. But
so what's the story?
They're going to study Torah. They're going to get there. I'm sorry. Okay, you can.
You know what the answer is? The answer is like this. He was telling them, listen, even though we're supposed to learn Torah on the road, you're right. There's a mitzvah to learn Torah when you're going on. It says in the Torah. But you have to know, there's two different ways of learning Torah. One is to learn Torah just to read, like you read, Girsah. You're reading, going from, just reading. But there's also going into the depths of the Torah, the deep elements of the Torah, the deep concepts of the Torah. Two different types of learning. There's one that's called Iyun, and the other one is called Bekiut, right? Just, Girsah, Gores. You know what I mean? So Yosef HaTzadik told his brothers, he said, you can do, when you go on the road, it's not proper to do Iyun, to go deep into the Torah. Only just to read. Just to go over, Why? Because once you start arguing about why is this, why is that, like DC asked me now, right? Why is it like that? Why that? Once you get into that and you're on the road, what's going to happen, right? You're going to lose your way. You're going to go on the wrong exit, right? Instead of going to exit 35, you're going to exit 38. Wind up somewhere else. You don't know where you're going. So a person has to be, when he's on the road, he can't go too deep in the Torah. He has to just read. Don't go now into the depths. You're on the road, for God's sakes. You got to concentrate where you're going, where you're going to wind up. There was several cases, right, in Israel, that there were some soldiers that were on the road, on the highway, and they got off on the wrong exit, in the Palestinian areas, and they got killed over there. They entered the town. Once they entered the town, they stoned them to death or whatever. They burned them, lynched. They got lynched.
They don't have weapons.
You understand? It doesn't help them. Can you imagine? They surround you. They just engulf you. You can't do nothing.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, right? But it happened several times already.
It's like an air.
Whatever. Anyway, the point is that a person has to know that when you go, you can learn on the road, but don't go too deep. When you're on the road, this is not the time. You want to learn deep Torah, go to the Bet HaMidrash, right? Go to the yeshiva, sit over there, right? Don't go on the road. That's not your place. If you're going on the road, you gotta learn, but learn light. Just read. That's the way it has to be. That's the difference between this and that. So that's what Yosef HaTzadik told them. Right? He said, what? Learn, but don't go too deep. Once you go too deep, you start arguing this back and forth, and you're going to lose your way. And that's exactly the same reason, by the way, he told them also that what? That don't start arguing with each other about what happened between Yosef and this and that. Because once you start arguing, you're going to start also to lose your way. You're going to lose your concentration. This is what he told them. So Yosef HaTzadik gave them a very good advice. But there was also another thing, right? Which was what? He told them also that when you go to my father, right? I want you to send a message. Send a message from me to my father. So he says, I'm going to tell you, when I left my father, that time ago, that I was kidnapped, then I was sold by you. So he says, I remember what I was studying with my father, Torah at home, before I left. They were also studying Torah, They're studying Torah all the time, these people, all the time in Torah. So he says, I remember which subject we were studying, right? Which sugya, which subject matter. So which was it, right? It was Egla Rufa. So I want you to remind my father that we were studying that subject matter before I left him to go to find you guys.
What's Egla Rufa?
So what's Egla Rufa? We're talking about where, it's a special case in the Torah, right? Brought down in the Torah. That they found a dead body on the road. Right? So now they don't know who killed this guy. So they don't have any witnesses, no nothing, right? No camera footage, no nothing. So what do they do? How do they atone for this, right? Because when there's a murder that occurs, there needs to be also atonement. In other words, that murder has to be avenged. What does that mean? The guy has to be killed, the murderer punished, he has to be punished, whatever. Something has to happen. But here we don't know who killed the guy. So what does it tell us to do, the Torah? It tells us, since we don't know who the murderer is, so you have to do a certain ritual to atone for the murder. What's the ritual that they do? What they do is like this, right? They take a
Ego.
I'm sorry?
Ego.
Egla, you know what's egla, right?
Ego.
Calf.
Calf.
Calf, yeah. So
Ego.
they take a calf, and what they do is before taking the calf, they measure the distance between that place where they found their body to all the cities, right? So whichever city happens to be the closest, what they do is that they tell the sages of that city, the elders of that city, they say you have to come out there, and do this ritual. You have to do it, right? Because since the guy died closest to you, it must be maybe, right, probably, that somebody in your city killed this guy.
Oh, wow.
Since you're in terms of distance, you're the closest city to this whole thing. Or somebody from there killed the guy, or somebody didn't defend him, whatever. Something happened over here. There was some kind of a failure.
They were supposed to defend him?
Or defend him, or to guide him in the proper way, to guide him, to accompany him on the road. There's something that they didn't do over there to take care of this guy. There's some negligence.
I understand.
So therefore, he says that now they have to bring this calf, and they decapitate it, right? They chop off the head of this arufah. Chop off the head, and then they have to make a certain ceremony in order to atone for the murder of this man. Understand? So tells him Yosef HaTzadik, this is what we were studying when I left my father. Right, that was a long time ago. So what happens is, right, that they go back home to their father, to Yaakov Avinu, and they say, "Oh, Yosef Chai," right? They say, "Oh, Yosef is still alive. Not only is he alive, he's the king of Egypt." Oh, right. So Yaakov Avinu hears the words of the brothers. So what's his reaction? You know what his reaction is? Doesn't believe them. Disbelief. What? Come on, you gotta be joking. What are you talking about? Yeah. So the Midrash says, by the way, you know why he didn't believe them? Why? Then why wouldn't he believe them? What? They're his sons. They're tzaddikim. They're chachamim.
Right. So
why would they lie?
True.
So where was this disbelief coming from? That's the question, right? So you know what the answer is? The answer is, from here the Torah teaches us a lesson, right? Which, by the way, this lesson is known in all communities. That what? You know what the lesson is? That once a person is a liar, even when he tells the truth, they don't believe him. It's a parable. It's like a mashal.
Right.
When you're like a habitual liar, you always lie. Everybody knows that you don't tell the truth. They won't even believe when you tell them the truth. He's lying again. That's what they say, right?
Red wolf, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what happened with Yaakov Avinu. You see, that's what the Chazal said. Can you imagine? He didn't believe them because he thought that they were liars.
All this time?
What does that mean? So what it means is like this, right? When they sold Yosef, they came to him and said, "Oh, look at this, some animal must have killed him.
Right.
Look at that blood." So he thought that they were lying, He suspected that they were lying. He didn't believe them so much. So because of that, he said, now they're coming telling me another lie.
Right.
So he doesn't believe them, you understand? This is the reason why he didn't believe.
Sure.
So there was a disbelief over there. So what happens is, right, that he doesn't believe. So what does that mean? He needs proof. Prove it to me. Come on, can you show me some evidence? Hard evidence over here. So, they didn't have those days cell phones. They could do some footage, whatever. Take some pictures of him. So what do? Right? They told him, they said, you know what he told us? When he left you those many years ago, you were studying the topic of Egla Arufah. Is that right? So Yaakov says, "Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, it must be that he's really alive." Then he believed them, right? That was the whole idea. You understand? Right. So he believed them because they proved it. But otherwise, he didn't believe them. They said, "These guys are making up more stories now. Giving you some more fables." And like I said, a fable about this. Then now this fable. So that's the reason why he didn't believe them in the beginning. So, okay, fine. So now, right, what happens is that Paro also sent, when they went back home, right, they sent some gifts over there also. What does that mean? Yosef HaTzadik sent gifts to his father. Good wine, good stuff, good food, all kinds of stuff. He sent it as a gift to his father. And not only that, Paro gave them also something else, right, to use. You know, right, he gave them like these wagons to take home. Why is that? They should be able to put their luggage there, right, their furniture and stuff, and bring it to Mitzrayim.
I see.
When they're going to come, so Paro supplied them the wagons. U-Haul, you know.
Men too, or just a wagon?
He gave me U-Haul.
Men too, or just wagon? Men also?
No, just wagon. They didn't need men. They were strong, these guys.
How are they going to carry?
They were able to carry the whole country, these people.
Really?
They're very strong.
Well, Shemot or physically?
Physically? Physically, they were very strong. We talked about that. So see my lecture from Sukkot. You'll see from there. We talked about that whole story. So anyway, the point is, right, that Paro sells them these wagons, right? Sends them the wagons. So once Yaakov Avinu sees these wagons, he got shocked. You know, he didn't want to use that stuff. He wanted to burn it. Those wagons, right? Why is that? Because there was Avodah Zarah on it. You know, the picture of Avodah Zarah was on the wagons. Yeah.
I know what you're talking
Can you imagine such a thing?
You
know, so when he saw that, he said, "No, I'm gonna go with this." You know, this is like like going with a moving church. Avodah Zarah, you know, that's what it is. You know, I'm gonna go in this wagon with this Avodah Zarah. Can you imagine, like, you know, a rabbi goes in a car, you know, like all crosses over there, you know, there's a cross over here, cross over there, you know. It's not exactly a place for a rabbi. No. You know what I mean? Not exactly, right? You know, pictures of you know the loser, you know, the J, you know. I can't think. I'm gonna go with you know his mother, you know, his mother. So what do you call it? I'm gonna go. Can you imagine a rabbi driving a car like that? So that's what, you know. I was telling you, what, he wants me to go in these wagons? What, are you crazy? I can't go like that. So you know what they did? Yehuda went and he solved the problem. So what did he do? How did he solve the problem? He burned the idols, you know, that were there. You know, he took fire, burned it to the crisp. You know, that's what he did, right? He did to you know. First of all, right? So they say that we see from here that Yehuda has this quality of getting rid of Avodah Zarah. You know, that this is what he had over there. So this was something in history also that we find that the kings of Yehuda, the kings that we had from Yehuda, also burned Avodah Zarah in many cases.
They also made Avodah Zarah.
Yeah, that's something else. But we're talking about the good ones, right? Not the bad boys.
Right.
The bad boys is a different story. So we're saying, right, that they did the Avodah Zarah, they burned the Avodah Zarah. So this is what Yehuda did in order to facilitate for his father to get into those wagons, because otherwise, you know, this was like a moving church. This thing, right?
Right.
Okay. So fine. So now they put their people into the wagons. Everybody's in there. The whole family, right? How many people were there altogether? 70 people were altogether, right? What does that mean? That Yosef had already there 4 people, right? Him, his wife, right, and 2 children, 2 sons. So there were 66 that were coming. Altogether with Yosef, there were 70. 70 souls.
Right.
So now this issue of the 70 souls, this is a very important thing.
Wasn't Yocheved born on the gateway into?
Yes, that she was born before when they came in, right? Exactly. So altogether there was 70. Once the whole thing, you know, came together.
Right.
Once the whole thing came together, so it became 70. Now what happens like this, right? That this 70 is a very important thing. These 70 souls that Yaakov Avinu created, right? These were his sons, daughter-in-laws, grandsons, you know,
great-grandchildren,
the whole family, the whole Jamat, you know, the whole
generation, yeah.
So these, by the way, are very, very important. These souls, because these souls are the roots of all of Am Yisrael. You know, all of Am Yisrael, we come from these roots.
These 70 souls.
Writers, these 70 souls, we come from them.
No, I closed the door because they were so. Okay, continue.
So, what does that mean? We already discussed this before a little bit, right? Several months ago. We said that this 70 is a very important number. Why? Because we also have 70 nations in the Goyim, in the non-Jews, right?
Right.
So these 70 souls correspond to the 70 nations of the Goyim. What does that mean? That this is the side of the Tumah, this is the side of the Kedusha.
I see.
You know, this is the side of impurity, it has to correspond to each other. In other words, in this world, the side of the Tumah It's equal.
Can I ask you a
You
question?
know, it has to be equal.
I have to ask you a
Understand?
question then.
Yeah.
When somebody studies Torah, does that mean there's somebody on the other side of the world that's doing something equally as evil?
This I wouldn't go that far, but what I'm telling you is that the power has to be equal, not the deeds. That's something else. Deeds are, we choose what to do. Deeds, that's something else. It's a different story. That's not the case, right? So when it comes to power, though, when it comes to the power between the balance has to be exactly equal between evil and
In the
good.
whole world.
In the whole world, yes. In Olam Hazeh, in this world. In Olam Haba, it's not going to be like that.
Right.
Why? In Olam Haba, Kadosh Baruch Hu will get rid of the Satan. You know, so there will be no more Satan. There will be no more people with Satan. The whole satanic thing will be gone. You know, out of this world. But until then, until that time comes, we have both equal. And by the way, this is what David was talking about. Right, several times he mentioned, right, that every place you go, you see like this, you know, imbalance, right? You have the good side, the bad side, and they're like pretty much equal, you know, more or less, grappling with each other, you know. Sometimes this one wins,
right.
Sometimes this one wins, you know, back and forth. Sometimes it's Obama, sometimes it's Trump, right? You know, that's the way it is. So, right, over there in Israel, it's the same thing, by the way, same idea. You know, sometimes the left wins, sometimes the right wins. The left is like, you know, they're the, you know. They're the troublemakers over there. Okay, so anyway, we have the same thing. So this corresponds one to the other, 70 against 70. So these 70 souls were the roots of Am Yisrael. We all come from this root, those 70 souls. What does that mean? That means that the Goyim also, right? If you look at the Goyim and if you look at the Jewish people, there are Jews that look Hispanic. There are Jews that look white. There are Jews that look black. There are Jews that have every kind of appearance that there is in the world. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because those 70 families have all those roots inside of them, right? All the nations. You understand? So the nations have also that, but they come from the side of Tumah, and the Jews are coming to the side of Kedusha. But really, basically, when it comes to the nature, that we have all those elements in there. Right? This element, that element, it's all the same. It's all one corresponding to the other. That's the way it works in this world. That's why you find right Jews from every kind of persuasion, from any kind of color, any kind of whatever. That's the way it is. Let me tell you, these 70 souls were very, very important, right? So they went down, but interesting, right? That when they go down, the Torah tells us, right? In the Chumash you find that it calls them Shivim Nefesh, right?
70 souls.
70 souls, right? Exactly. So from here, by the way, the Arizal learns from here an interesting point. Those 70 souls that went down to Mitzrayim, that what? That he calls them nefesh, right? But we already said that the neshama has 3 parts to this, you know, that there's a nefesh, the lowest part, there's a ruach and neshama. So we have 3 parts. So why does it tell you only the lower part? Nefesh, you know? Why does it use that? Just say neshama. You know, look at the bright side, look at the higher side, right? Why are you looking at the low side? Hey, what do you say? You have an answer for that?
Lifeblood.
Lifeblood?
Lifeblood. Nefesh is lifeblood. It's the blood.
Right, but why call them like that? That's the question, right? What's the reason for that?
Right.
So, says the Arizal, from here you'll learn one thing, right? This has to do with what? It has to do with the fact that they left Israel. That's the whole connection over here. Once they left Israel, they were called nefesh.
Souls.
Yeah, but the lower part.
They lost.
You understand? So what does that mean? That means that, so it learns from here the Arizal, that when a person leaves Eretz Israel, he loses his neshama. This is from the Zohar also, Zohar Kadosh says this, right? Wow. When you leave Eretz Israel, you lose your neshama. What does that mean? The higher parts of your neshama you lose.
Wow.
The highest.
You lose them, yeah.
So you basically...
You're basically operating on a nefesh, basically, you understand? When you're in Chutz La'aretz, you're only operating on the lower part of the neshama.
The minute you enter Israel, you are operating on the neshama level?
So we have to, we're going to discuss that right now. Right now we're going to discuss that. I just want to say one thing, right, before we get into that what that means is that in Chutz La'aretz, like we're like, you know, kind of like disadvantaged, you know, and outside in diaspora, the Jews. We're not fully, our souls are not fully aligned properly over here. And this is why we have problems over here, you know, in Chutz La'aretz. We don't get along so well together. We have all kinds of issues, fights, you know, all kinds of. Why is that? Because since our souls are not properly aligned in Chutz La'aretz, so we're not really living the life in the proper way here. You know, and there are reasons for that, by the way. Why it has to be this way, all kinds of things, whatever. But the point is, that the Zohar Kadosh, by the way, points out, if that's the case, right, that really it's so bad to be in Chutz La'aretz, to be outside of Israel. It's only nefesh over here, right? So if that's the case, the question is, how are there such big rabbis sometimes who live, in places like that, right?
Right.
These giant rabbis, in Europe and Iraq and Morocco, this was not Eretz Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So how are they able to become so great in Torah, just having the nefesh, right? Which is, seems like not really fitting.
Arbitrary.
So what the answer is? Says Zohar Kadosh, that a person who gets to that level, that he's a big chacham or whatever, they give him also the higher parts of the neshama, even though he's not in Israel.
I see.
You understand? So there is.
They thought of everything.
So there is a scenario where a person lives outside,
Yes.
but he himself is armed with the whole neshama. Why is that? Because he's involved in the Torah fully, fully engaged in the Torah. So if he's fully engaged in the Torah on a daily basis, like really, going all the way, and he's doing like a lot of good things, so he, has that, that neshama. Yeah, he has it. Yeah.
So it can be acquired.
Anyway, the point is, it can be acquired with a lot of difficulty. With a great difficulty. Most people will not acquire, will not get to this level. You understand? So that's why, by the way, people
But
always notice.
most Chachamim will. Most who study will.
I don't know.
When you say most people,
I
you
cannot
think
tell you most
Marasot?
Chachamim, but I'm telling you the ones who are really, top notch.
Right. I get it.
So,
Do we have any like that in America?
you got to use your, you got to use your noodles, whatever. So,
Do you have anybody here that?
Most likely him. He studies all day.
No, but he has a rabbi also.
my rabbi's already gone. He's already in the other world already. We're going to talk about it, by the way, Thursday night. We're going to talk
Rabbi
about
was chief of generation.
It's his your side coming up Thursday
Biggest man
night.
of generation.
So,
No, but
yeah.
you know that the greatest piano players or musicians still have a professor.
Yes. He's right. He's right.
The greatest tennis player still has a coach.
Right.
He also, by the way, had rabbis that trained him when he was young.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he also had rabbis. Nobody can be without a rabbi.
Sure.
Especially when you're young. Once you get older, you can pretty much know what to do already. But when you're young, like when I was his age, I always had a rabbi like close to me. I'm saying, like I was calling him like almost daily.
Right.
Asking questions, this.
Your rabbi that passed on.
Yeah.
Did you replace him with anybody, or
He has no replacement.
really?
Not yet.
Generation. Are you kidding?
Why does
He was something very special.
Why does God take people like that?
He's 93.
By the way, it's a very important question what he's asking. You know what the Gemara says about that, right? That he doesn't take them until he brings somebody on that level.
There's somebody in the world on his level?
In other words, he was born already. We don't know who he is yet. But, he will be revealed when he grows up. He'll be
Maybe
revealed.
it's you.
No, we're saying, the point is like this, right?
At that time.
That's what it says in the Gemara. It says that when one dies, the other one is born.
That's incredible.
In other words, there's a concept in Torah which is called lo alman yisrael. You know what that means? That the Jews are never left without a leader. There's always leaders. The leaders are always there. So you cannot say, in this generation we don't have anybody. Generation, there's always somebody. You shouldn't think that Hashem will not leave us with nobody. We're not going to be like that.
So somebody with the birth date of his passing, is that going to be that?
That's pretty much what it means, right? More or less, right? I don't know exactly if it means the same birthday exactly.
Trump just doesn't leave us like this. When he leaves. I'm serious that somebody qualified takes his place. Otherwise, we're finished here.
Right. So Jared will come next. Okay. So okay. So anyway, what they're saying is like this, right? That a person who leaves Eretz Yisrael, we learn from here, he's just a nefesh. That's what we learn. Arizal tells you, right? And by the way, the Zohar says, elaborates on this. Zohar Kadosh. It says that even if he goes back to Israel after, let's say he went away for a little while, he doesn't get it back for like 45 days, the neshama.
Wow.
It takes 45 days to get it back. Even though he left for a little while, whatever. So that's why, the halacha tells us, by the way, that in most cases the person is not allowed to leave Israel. Only for certain cases he's allowed to leave. But for most cases, not allowed to leave. Who gave you permission to destroy your neshama like that? To dissect your neshama? To cut it into pieces? Who gave you permission to do
When I
that?
traveled to Israel,
Yeah.
the last time I was there 15 years ago,
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's psychological or spiritual, whatever. When I come back,
Yeah.
I feel very depressed.
Yeah.
And
That's
when
exactly it.
I'm
That's exactly
there,
it. You've been there too? You've been there? You've never been there?
When
You got to
I'm-
go there. You
when
gotta-
I
I'm
have
there,
a thing that I have a deep belief for some reason from a young age that if I go there, I will not come back.
but when I'm there, I feel I feel something that I never felt here.
Right, that's it.
You know, I feel happier first
Right,
of
you
all.
feel happier. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's what my aunt just left, and she wanted me to go.
What, she went back there or just went to visit?
No, she went to visit.
To visit, okay.
And I didn't go because every time I go there and I come back, I'm depressed.
You feel
for like
depressed. You
months
feel
and
down.
months.
Wow.
Months and months.
Wow. This is not a fantasy. This is a reality. I can tell you, right? So the Zohar Kadosh tells us, right, that you lose your neshama when you leave, and that's why you feel so down. This is the reason why you feel depressed. You know, this is the reason why. Over there, people are very much happier, and by the way, they're happy with less because they don't need so much material. You know, they're more spiritual there. Yeah.
Is that also why
This is
after
the reason
Shabbat
why.
you feel depression?
Yeah, because you're losing your neshama of Shabbat. Yeah, there's also neshama of Shabbat, special neshama, additional neshama of Shabbat. Yeah, that's the reason why. Yeah, that's the reason why. Yeah.
I'm depressed when Shabbat starts and when it ends.
Right. But that, by the way, the whole thing with Shabbat is that only applies if you keep Shabbat.
Right.
Because if you don't keep Shabbat, you don't get the neshama. You don't get that.
Right.
Anyway, the point is, right, getting back to what said, so now, right, it calls them 70 souls that left. That they became nefesh. So, on the other hand, by the way, where do we learn that when you go to Israel, you know, let's say you didn't live there, like you never lived there. So if you go there, where do we learn you get the higher nefesh also? You get the higher. Where do we see that? So it's a pasuk in Yeshayahu, right?
Kind of process.
Isaiah. It says in his Isaiah, it says, right, that what? That when you go there to visit, right, hanoten ruach leholchin ba, v'neshama leoshvim ba. That's what it says, something like that, right? What does that mean? That if you go, there's two different levels of going to Israel. There's going to visit and there's going to live there. Two different levels. That's what the pasuk is telling you, right? Explaining the Arizal, this something, right? What does that mean? When you go to visit there, you get ruach, you get one level higher. You don't get neshama. When you go there to live, you get neshama. You understand? Yeah. So it depends why you're going there. That's the whole thing, right?
There are criminal elements in Israel also.
I was going to say, I hear
They're spiritual criminals. They're very spiritual criminals.
What about those people?
I hear the Yitzhar is
Yeah.
strong in Israel.
He's right.
Like if you're a normal person here, you
Yeah.
go over there, you become a psycho.
What happens is like this, right? That many people who went to Israel, they instead of going up, they went down over there.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And the reason is because there's a lot of pitfalls also there, you know. But the truth is that a person shouldn't think that what? Shouldn't think that because a lot of people went down, you know, this is not, I won't go, you know. This is not allowed to say such a thing like that. This is a very foolish thing to say.
You can go. Try it. Go visit.
Right? What's the foolishness of this, right? The halacha tells you like this. It says the Rambam in Laws of Kings. Over there it says something amazing, right? He says it's better to live in Eretz Israel, in a place where they're all idolaters over there. You know, Christians, whatever. There are places like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's full of
So
churches.
yeah, right, exactly. So he says it's better to live in a place like that than to live over here in a religious like area, you know, like Lakewood, you know, Muncie.
When you go
know,
to Israel, do you feel like it's
Borough
your
Park,
land?
whatever. Better to live over there with idolaters than to live over here with religious Jews.
When you enter
Amazing
the
thing.
land, do you feel that it's like your land? Do you feel it?
You feel that you're connected, you know, like
Yeah?
There's no question about it. No question about it.
You also feel it?
There's an elevation there.
I'm not on his level.
He already told you. He already told you. He told you. So the point is, Rabotai, that a person. This is the reason why it's a very, very big mitzvah to live in Eretz Israel. Can you imagine such a big mitzvah that it's better to be there in a bad environment than to be here in a good environment? This is a very big chidush, a very big novel idea. The Rambam says, where did he get this from? The Gemara. It's in the Talmud. It's not from the sky. He didn't get it from the sky. All right? So you see from there the greatness of living in Israel. So then the question is like this, right? Why is it that Kadosh Baruch Hu made this, that they had to leave Israel now? You know, the brothers and the family, and go to Mitzrayim.
I have to go through some form of.
It's a tikkun, yeah. It's a tikkun, yeah. There's for sure. There's a tikkun, but the question is, what really are we going there for, right? So the truth is that there are certain things. What happened was that when Hakadosh Baruch Hu created the world, He also scattered, like, sparks of kedusha, of holiness, and also in Chutz La'aretz, outside of Israel. So the job of the Jews when they live there is to gather those back up and bring them back to Israel.
Is that why we're everywhere?
Yeah, exactly. They have to gather up those sparks of kedusha, gather them all up, and bring them back. That's the whole idea, Until what? At that point, once they gather up everything, nothing will be left in Chutz La'aretz anymore, and therefore Chutz La'aretz will be
Collapse.
gone, right? Out of business. You know what I mean? That's it. That's the way it is. And nations will also cease to exist at that time. Understand? Because the reason why they exist, the nations, is because of those sparks of Kedusha that they have here. Once you remove those sparks, they'll like collapse.
All the nations.
All the nations. Yeah, all nations. Yeah. There won't be one left. What does that mean? There will be non-Jews left, but not as nations. They'll be left as just individuals. It's something else. But so therefore,
how close is this from happening, in your opinion?
We're very close. There's no question about it. I mean, we're talking about like on the verge. Maybe yes, maybe no. Depends how long you're going to live. Tell me how long you're going to live, and I'll tell you.
Why you?
I'm joking with you, but I mean, we don't know. Nobody knows how long he's going to live.
Let's do the calculation. 6,000 years it has to be. We're at 5-7 something, whatever.
Yeah, we're 250 away. That's
right.
Maximum 250.
But Shabbat comes in 18 minutes earlier.
250. You're talking about another 3-4 generations.
No,
we're talking about maximum.
Minus
maximum, right? It has to be less than
Shabbat
that.
Shabbat comes in 18 minutes before sunset. It's based on a numerical calendar.
Yeah, but we're not going to live 250 years.
No, but we can live, 7 years? Plus we have
let me explain to you guys how it works.
50 years.
The way it works is like this.
50 years at most.
Basically,
I'm
what's
not
going to be...
50 years either.
It doesn't have to be like that. The way it works is like this. That there is an appointed time before 6,000, not at 6,000. Before 6,000. There isn't the last moment that it could be, right? There is an appointed time. It can't go further than that. You know what I mean? So this time has to be sometime before 6,000. We don't know exactly the question is we don't know when. How much before?
So I didn't even know that about the 6,000 deadline.
There's a deadline, yes.
Okay, so then why have we been speculating about Mashiach all this time?
Because it can happen any moment.
It could be any minute. We don't know when it is.
It also happens sooner, right?
Yeah. So because of that, what we're trying to tell you is that 6,000 is the end. So therefore, we need to have also some time before that. Why? Because we're talking about the times that Mashiach has to have a certain time limit.
Right.
Times.
Rabbi, you believe in a Mashiach unequivocally?
Well, this is one of the principles of the Rambam, right? If you don't believe in the Mashiach, you're like considered like a heretic,
No, I'm sorry, I'm asking you this.
Yeah, that's the answer. The answer is if you don't believe it, you're like a heretic.
So you, as a person on your level, and with all the studying that you've done, you believe in every aspect, every little thing that's told in the Torah.
Well, if you don't, you're a fake rabbi. Might as well chop off the beard. Put some nair, get some nair on the face. To chop off.
Even things that you may come across that you may say, these are just rabbinical. I don't know if there's too much.
It's much deeper than that.
Right.
It's much more profound than that.
Yes.
So.
Now, do you believe these things because they are implanted into you so much? Or do you personally believe them from fear that you must believe them?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's a very good question.
That's a good question, yeah.
No, because he's a highly intellect human being. I mean, they say that the real intellectuals are atheists because the whole idea of believing in a God, a creator, is so far-fetched that a real smart person usually doesn't believe it. That's what they claim.
That's actually the opposite is true.
Right.
Any person who's really intellectual, he can see that there's a God. He doesn't have to learn the Bible to know that.
Right.
He just has to look at the world, how it functions.
Yeah.
It cannot be an accident, all this.
But yes, their challenge is who created Hashem.
Oh, so there,
you needed a creator to create all this, and it was impossible for all this to happen by itself.
Yeah.
Who created him?
Right. So the truth is, right, that he always was. In other words, Kadosh Baruch Hu is not bound to time, like we are. So there is no such a thing like by Kadosh Baruch Hu. Oh, there's a time, when he was created or when he was born. He was born.
You could say the same thing about life. There was probably always some speck of life there until it evolved and it branched out into what we have now.
Right, but we're not talking here about.
Argument is your son's
argument. See, evolving is like
my son's argument is 99% of the world's argument. My sons have nothing to do with this.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. This is a very good question, by the way. It's a very, 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 very important question. Sure. This is a very fundamental question over here, right? So the truth is that we Jewish people, number one, first of all, I think you have several questions over here, but the first question I think it was like this, right? That on what basis do you believe what you believe? What's the basis of the belief? Like that's your question. So the answer is, like this, that basically once you start to learn Torah, it becomes like very clear. Like in other words, it's just like you can't deny it. It's undeniable things.
You know what? The way he said it, his body language now. When I saw him, when he first started to become religious, I saw him on Queens Boulevard, and it's like 105 degrees.
You told me a story.
I'm sweating, and he has that tzitzit and this, and he goes, David, you're not wearing tzitzit. At least you can wear it. I said, Rabbi, I don't understand one thing. I said, you don't have a drop of sweat on you. I said, look at me. And David, when you're on this level and you're studying Torah, the heat, the cold, these things don't bother you.
It's true, actually. It's true what you're saying.
But the way you said it.
I must tell you one thing. That usually the biggest problem, especially in our generation, why people don't believe, is because they're ignorance. They just don't know. They don't know nothing. Zero knowledge.
They also don't want to believe it.
That's also true.
You remember what you said? God forgive me.
That's a different class of people.
You remember what you said about them
last
week?
Right.
That, they hate the Torah. They truly do.
There's a different class of people. There's different classes.
I've seen both sides.
Yeah. There are people. Most of the people in this world don't believe because they're ignorant. They don't know what the heck they're talking about. They don't have knowledge. They don't know what's going on in this world. The ignorance is what causes ignorance? Because you don't read. You don't read the Bible. You don't read the Torah. You don't read the Talmud. You have to read it yourself to really understand what it says there. Once you read it yourself, once you get into it yourself, you see that it's undeniable.
I see.
Understand? So basically, the facts are overwhelming.
With me, it's something else.
Yeah.
I study Torah only with you, or I do tefillin in the morning.
Yeah.
I believe in God. I want to believe in God for comfort.
Yes.
Okay? It gives me comfort.
Yes.
I would rather believe in Him than not believe in Him.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Because it gives me comfort.
Makes you feel better.
Right? I don't want to be alone.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
I understand you very well.
I don't want to be alone.
I think that's also a very good thing. But the truth is that I'll tell you something. There are people also like this that don't study really by themselves. They don't pick up books and learn. And this is why we, the rabbis, are commanded to teach these people. That's our job. That's what Baruch Hu sent us to the world for. We had to teach them, because these people will not learn on their own. They just don't do it. Don't do it.
I want to say something. I was also an atheist when I first,
Ah, really? Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay.
When was that, Lisa?
When I was 15, 16.
Confession time. Confession.
Okay. Close to his sons and everything. We shared many of the same philosophies.
Yes.
When was that? Because he sounds like an 80-year-old man. You haven't been around this earth.
I know, but I consider myself.
No, by the way, that was yesterday, but now he's becoming a judge. He's becoming a Dayan now. Ask him later. I'll explain to you what that means.
Say generally, I'm very quick about it. Basically, I saw both sides, and my argument always with people who I have friends who are atheists, and it's fine. I still accept them. My argument always like this. It's like, first of all, we have a national event. The Jewish people have a national event.
That's the whole thing.
And the second thing is that in my own lifetime, I've seen things that are outside of my control that happen from a certain formula used according to the Torah, which is prayer. So when you see things that are outside of your control happening, you can say that, you're forcing yourself to believe it, but that in itself is already a belief. That's a philosophy. So there's no atheism. Atheism is not true. It can't be.
There are also those who are atheists from a different reason, not because they're ignorant, because they just want to continue doing sins. In other words, for them, it's just a convenient way to have nobody bothering you. Get out of my face. I want to do what I want to do.
This is conviction.
You understand?
It's not easy to live.
So there are people who are very intellectual, and they really know in the back of their mind that there's a God, but they want to pretend like they don't know. Why? Because they want to go and do their sins. The Vatican, this kind of thing.
Would you say that the sect of people that don't believe in God are stronger personalities, that they don't need that comfort?
No.
And they feel they can be on their own?
No, they're usually cowards, just the opposite. It's a coward. It's a coward. Yeah, it's a coward. Yeah.
It's a weaker personality.
Why? Because what he's doing is
because
basically...
it takes fear to believe in God also.
It says that.
Fear,
But this is
right?
courage.
You have to fear the Lord.
Yeah.
And when you don't fear the Lord, you must be stronger. You think that...
Absolutely.
No, you have no knowledge of the Lord. What do you mean? That's why you don't fear the Lord, because to you there's no Lord.
That's true too.
It's cowardice.
But one of the things I must tell you that this is a big discussion. This whole thing, right? It's a very big discussion. But one of the greatest proofs, by the way, one of the proofs that he also mentioned was also very important.
Yeah. But you always believed in God.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because I felt it. I felt it. Yeah.
He always.
I feel it now. I know there's a God.
He's not one of these people that denounce God or something. He believed in God.
So,
always?
Yeah.
What I must tell you is two things.
All of us did. The whole crowd.
I didn't. I used to read books on atheism all the time.
There's two things, I can tell you. That one is, as he mentioned, right? This was also mentioned by one of my rabbis when I was young. When I was even younger than you.
Right.
He told us one thing. He said that, we Jews don't have. It's not our religion. Is not like the other religions. What's the difference? Our religion is not like just one crazy guy, epileptic, who has some dreams in his head, and comes out and says, "Oh, God spoke to me, and so do like this, and worship me, or worship that, or worship the tree, or worship the Mercedes, God, whatever, God knows whatever it is, right? Worship something." So you ask this guy, like, who are you to tell me what to do? You're a jerk, idiot, maybe you're epileptic, you're a nutcase.
Yeah.
Maybe you need therapy, go into the psychiatrist. So what, why should I believe him? It's my word against his. So there's really no basis to believe a person like that. And this is what all the other religions are. They have some guy, their hero.
Yeah,
Mr. Their hero. Oh, he was the one. He was the,
one-man operation.
Exactly, one man thing. Oh, he's the one. He's this. He's that. He's that. He's a prophet. He's this. Right. He's the Messiah. He's he's the son of God. God knows all these things, right? So. So that can be refuted by anybody else.
Right.
Who are you to tell me what to do? Like you say like that, I say like this, something else. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But Judaism is not like that. When we received the Torah, there was millions of people that were standing there.
Right.
Understand? So this was like testimony. The whole nation saw this event, and the whole world knew that was going on. So basically, you can't deny something which is a historical fact.
National event.
You understand? It was a historical fact.
No, but
not only national, but it was international. You understand? Everybody knew what happened.
Their argument is that the Torah cannot be used as a history book.
Wait a second. Forget about the Torah that says that. I'm thinking we as Jews, we all were there.
Right.
So it's not like something, with some, like we heard from somebody, oh yeah, there was some guy, some prophet, told us like that. We saw it ourselves.
We're the family. That's our ancestors. Yeah. Abraham and Isaac.
This is it's an undeniable historical fact.
Literally our grandfathers. We carry their genetics. It's crazy.
So that's one thing, right? That Judaism is different from all the other religions because we have as a historical fact what happened. Right? All the history, by the way, that we have in our Bible, everything is proved. Look at the artifacts that they find, all these things,
Right.
All the things that we have, the kings, all these things, everything is proven. Nothing is false there. There's not one false word over there. The whole biblical narratives are all proven.
Right.
It's facts. We're not talking about some theories or whatever, some stuff like that. No,
it's not a story.
It's not a story. It's history. So that's one thing, right? That's number one. But number two, the big Mekubalim, like the Ramchala, one of the things that he says is like this, right? He was, by the way, a very smart man,
right.
very intelligent.
Highly intellectual.
And he knew astronomy very well, like the movements of the stars, movements of the planets. So he says, once you learn astronomy, you have to admit one thing, that there has to be a God. You know why? Because the accuracy of what happens in the world, how the motion of the planets, if one little thing will change, the whole world will be destroyed. Understand? So we're talking about like pinpoint accuracy for every little
disasters do happen. Natural disasters.
I'm not talking about disasters. I'm talking about the world functioning as a unit, the universe.
Forces, gravity,
the solar system. Accidents don't happen over there. Because if it would, we would all die,
Right.
One little false move, we'd all be dead.
Yeah, if the sun moves.
In other words, if the Earth would move out of its orbit, let's say, right?
Well, the sun actually has a limit. It will burn out one day.
You say that, but
according to that.
But what I'm telling you is like this, right?
And there's so many suns.
By the way, that may be true. It may be true what you're but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the fact that one little false move can change. You know what the best example is, by the way? The best example is like this, right? We, in order to, as human beings, to live, we need to have a perfect distance between us and the sun. If that distance is changed just a little bit, we all burn over here. We all freeze. Understand? So you think this is an accident?
Does the Torah give any explanation why Hashem chose the Earth, this inanimous small planet?
There is explanation.
This is the way He made it. This is the way He made it. But what I'm telling you is that the accuracy of the world is so precise. That, by the way, and a human being could not make this kind of world. You understand? We don't have the intelligence to do this.
They say evolution. Mathematics did it.
You cannot say that. That's the whole thing, right? Because it has to have somebody who planned it. You understand? These things don't happen with a haphazard. It's not random.
Too good to be true.
Random doesn't. Random doesn't.
You know what random is?
You cannot make a world like this randomly.
To have one gene move to the next, it takes literally trillions and trillions of possibilities. And if the next one is your own possibility, you already failed.
So once a person, that's exactly the point. Once a person knows science and he knows astronomy, the only intelligent choice will be that there has to be a God, because I'm not talking about now. Yeah, I'm not talking about which God and this. I'm not talking about that. But there has to be somebody, because somebody planned this out. It can't just be randomly. How this happens. There's no such thing. It's too accurate. It's too precise.
About Hashem right now.
They were teaching. There was a debate whether they should teach intelligent design or not in a school somewhere in the South. With the crazies there, the fundamentalist Christians.
Yeah.
And it went to court. They took it to court. And a scientist over there took an organism in the water. There's so many that we don't even know about. They found almost a microscopic organism that...
Amoeba?
No, it's like a fish, but it actually moves. It actually has propellers in the back. It looks like a little
plankton
boat, with it. And, the fundamentalists were arguing, look at this is perfect. This thing could not have evolved just out of nowhere. This was designated, to be created this way.
For architecture.
If one little move would occur on the Earth, so one false move, you understand? The orbit would change a little bit, slightly.
Right.
Everybody would die.
Yeah.
But, so we're talking about,
But the prosecution or whatever, who didn't want this taught in the school, they found the same organism, except it was defective. It didn't have one propeller.
We don't really care about that.
So he said, if they were all meant to be perfect, to float, why is this one born defective?
So the answer is that not everybody was meant to be perfect. We're also defective people in this world, right? They're crippled and this and that, handicapped. So that's what does it have to do with that?
And religion will tell us that, the child came out defective because
if you look at the genetics of that organism,
Yeah.
it's meant to be perfect. That is a defect in the production. You understand?
So basically, we have two categories of people who don't believe in God. One is the ignorant, right? Foolish people,
Yes.
don't study. And number two is the ones who are sinners, who want to continue with
they don't want to be accountable.
They don't want to be accountable, exactly. They don't want to have somebody over their head,
They just want to chill, man. They just want to... says that.
Yeah. So the point is, Rabbi,
That they want to chill.
that
They just want to do what they want. They don't want somebody... It's very hard, man.
The world is full of
the
those.
Jews that went down to Mitzrayim, right? I want to finish off with this idea, right? They went to Mitzrayim. So they lost their souls, and because of that. But because we have to gather up all these sparks of holiness, we have to go to these places and gather them, right? And this is the reason why we're here, where we are, all these places, right? To gather up these things. Once we gather it up, that's where the Geulah, the redemption occurs. Once we finish all this tikkun, all this rectification, the redemption really occurs. So the Jewish people had to go down to Mitzrayim. And by the way, what does the Chazal tell us? They say something very powerful about that. They say that if you leave Eretz Israel, one who leaves Eretz Israel is considered like he's worshipping idols. Can you imagine? So now we understand what that means. That when you leave Eretz Israel, what happens? You're going to a place. By the way, there's also different. There's a different thing. What's the difference between Eretz Israel and the outside lands? Eretz Israel is governed directly by Hashem, by God, without any intermediary. There's no angel there who's the intermediary. In Chutz La'aretz, there's intermediaries. Every nation has its appointed officer,
yes.
Right? But we Jewish people in Eretz Israel, we don't have anybody. Hashem is directly over there. There's no appointed officer. There's no appointed this. There's no nothing. There's no angel. He directly rules over Eretz Israel. So therefore, if a person goes to Chutz La'aretz, it's considered like an idolater. It's like worships idols. Why is that? Because he's going to a place where he's now serving Hashem through an intermediary, not directly to Hashem.
That's really how it is.
That's how it is, yeah.
When we pray and everything, we're through an intermediary.
Exactly. He takes up the prayers, and all these things happen through this intermediary. You cannot, from here, in this place, you cannot go directly to God like that, so directly. It's an amazing thing, right?
But there
you
can.
Yeah, in Israel it's direct.
He hears you right away.
It's not, yeah, exactly. So the point is that because of all these reasons, the person who leaves Eretz Israel is considered like an idolater. So you can imagine, right, that it's a very severe thing. But sometimes we're going against our will. They had no choice, these people, because they had a famine over there. There was no choice. But a person willfully should not leave Eretz Israel, just because he feels like it, maybe I'll make more money in New York, in California, I'll make a better salary over there, get a better,
I don't think my parents should have left, if you ask me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, a lot of people left for the wrong reason.
Not because of that reason, but I didn't see a reason for my mother a war broke out. She already had a job teaching in the school.
Yeah.
The director told her not to leave, that she had a future there. My father was schlepping around the same way he was schlepping around here. You know what I'm saying? We would have grown up there and...
it would have been fine, it would have been fine. So the truth is, Rabbi, that a person, because of this reason, has to try to stay in Eretz Israel as much as possible. And when we leave, we have to leave. Sometimes there's no choice. That's what happened with the tribes. They had to leave. And by the way, you know what happens when you leave Eretz Israel? What happens is that your children and grandchildren will not be so religious as you. They're not going to be so knowledgeable like you. They're not going to get the same education that you have. The education over there is much worse, much lower level.
Here.
Yeah. So, therefore, this affects also the generations as well.
The government.
When they go outside of Israel, they lose their knowledge in Torah, they lose their, their emunah, their faith, and there's also a lot of intermarriage. What is the rate of intermarriage, by the way? In America, they say it's over 50%. It's like 60, 70. In Europe, they say it's 80, 90. So we're talking about intermarriage is very, very, very strong. And this is what happens when you go to Chutz La'aretz. There's a lot of people who leave Judaism. There's a lot of people, all kinds of things like this. Lack of knowledge, lack of education. And people start looking like pathetic. Pathetic Jews. But all this is a tikkun. We have a tikkun. So sometimes a person has no choice. But if you do have a choice, a person should try to stay in Eretz Israel as long as possible, as much as possible, right? Because the neshama over there, you're fully connected to Hashem. Your neshama is fully aligned, three levels, right? Everything is fully good. Even though, by the way, still we're in galut over there also. There's galut, there's exile over there. Why? Because until the Shekhinah comes, when the Mashiach comes, we're still in exile. But nevertheless, the situation over there is much better. So Kadosh Baruch Hu should be mezakeh us to go to Eretz Israel. Thanks for coming. I'm sorry?
Unless you get caught up with the